Welcome everyone to the UK, Finnish and Norwegian Maritime Decarbonisation event. My name is Tom Chant. I'm the Chief Executive of the Society of Maritime Industries, which is the trade body in the UK for the maritime engineering sector. I'll be your host for the next 2 hours, and we have policy teams and industry joining us and sharing their work and their ideas. So from the UK, Norway and Finland. I'm especially fond of the North Sea region. We, I think, too easily forget our shared history and close borders. You know, we go right back to from before the Romans. The Romans did quite a lot of trading around the North Sea. And of course, this carried on through the good work of the Vikings. You Nordic visitors weren't always the most friendly of visitors, but over time, I think Viking raids actually built more towns than they destroyed and created a community of people who did business together and, of course, continue through today doing that. So great to get round the table together today. The recent Global Climate Change Conference, COP26, provided an opportunity for most of the world to discuss the environment issues. And maritime, we continue to discuss, of course, all the different sources of energy to move away from heavy fuel oil. One initiative launched by the UK's Department for International Trade has been the Clydebank Declaration, which is the opening of the green corridors between signatory nations. And over 20 countries have signed that to date. And this is a policy lever to enable faster introduction of technology between signatory nations. So coming up, we have 3 policy speakers and 4 industry companies, each with a short, sharp presentation about their work. And then we're going to have a lot of question and answer time at the end as well. So do start putting your questions in the chat as they come to mind. So first of all, we have an official welcome by Chris Barton. Chris Barton is Her Majesty's Trade Commissioner for the Department for International Trade, and he leads DIT's work across the 34 European countries. So I believe, Mauricio, over to you to start this session. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chris Barton and I'm Her Majesty's Trade Commissioner to Europe. And it's my job to encourage trade and investment between the UK and other European countries, including Norway and Finland. And I'm delighted to be able to participate in the conference today. I want to talk about 2 things. I want to talk about the importance of trade and investment and the place of Norway and Finland in that for the UK and of maritime sector. And then I want to talk about the importance of sustainability. And again, the importance of Norway and Finland and the maritime sector within that. So let me start with some thoughts on the importance of trade and investment. The UK government has always been a strong supporter of trade and investment because we see those as driving economic growth, creating jobs and improving living standards. And that's important at any time, but it's particularly important now as we look to accelerate recovery from COVID, as we look to ensure levelling up across our country of living standards, and as we look to improve sustainability, which involves huge investment across our economies. And we're really pleased to see Norway and Finland as a fundamental part of our efforts on trade and investment. The UK enjoys over £28 billion of trade with Norway and Finland together in any given year. We've got new trade deals. It's not the same as the single market or the customs union, but they're at least as good as the trading arrangements that either of us or any of us have with any other country in the world outside the single market and the customs union. The prospects for economic growth in our countries are strong. We've got very complementary economies, including in maritime, and we share deep cultural, personal, and economic links between us. So we've got a very good prospect for seeing growth in trade and investment across the piece, and it's really good to be discussing the opportunities of that today. And maritime sector in particular has an important role to play within that. Within the UK, over 95% of UK trade comes through the maritime sector, 80% around the world. And in and of its own right, the maritime sector is important economically. It's worth about £17 billion, the equivalent to the UK computer industry. And it is the employer of about 165,000 people across the UK. So it is excellent to be talking about trade and investment in general, great to be talking about it with colleagues from Norway and Finland, and great to be talking about it with the maritime sector. Now, the second thing I wanted to touch on was the importance of sustainability. Now, I hope it won't be a surprise to you that the UK is deeply committed to sustainability and to tackling climate change, as I know Norway and Finland are too. We showed that internationally over the last couple of weeks with the chairing of the COP26, which we were very honoured to do. And it's our view that that came out in a really positive place. Of course, it hasn't got us all the way that we need to in order to ensure that temperature rises are kept within 1.5 degrees, but it has got us a long way there, from around over 3 degrees to 2.1 degrees, and a pathway to 1.5. We saw significant contributions in terms of new commitments by a very large range of countries. We saw business playing a critical role, with now over 5,000 companies signed up to the race to zero. And we saw agreements on finance, on forestry, and on fuels, which are all really important for delivering our goals. So the UK is very committed to tackling climate change internationally, and we see maritime sector as playing an important role within that. Overall, the maritime sector is responsible for about 2 to 3% of global emissions, so that needs to be reduced. But equally, the maritime sector gives us probably the most, or one of the most sustainable forms of transport in the world, so has a major role to play in delivering our low carbon solutions. Then the UK has also shown its commitment to sustainability domestically as well. We were the first country in the world to sign up to legally binding zero emissions targets for 2050. We followed that up with concrete plans, including the 10-point plan, which our Prime Minister published last year, setting out a range of actions across the power sector, transport, heating, housing, agriculture, business, and more to deliver that net zero outcome. We've followed it up with a net zero strategy over the last couple of months, setting out more specific policy positions on a range of issues in order to deliver it, and then back that up with individual elements of our sustainability plan for each element of the economy. So we've got concrete plans and arrangements for delivering on our low carbon goals. And that includes the maritime sector as well, where we have strong commitments to plot a course to net zero for the UK maritime sector. We've got plans to ensure phasing out of non-zero emissions shipping vehicles. We've got plans to accelerate the development of zero emission technology and infrastructure, including £20 million clean maritime demonstration competition. We've agreed to extend the renewable transport fuel obligation to include the maritime sector, and we're going to include maritime emissions in our CO2 budgets. And of course, Norway and Finland are doing much too. Internationally, both were strong supporters of ambitious COP outcomes, for which we're really grateful. And domestically, both Norway and Finland leading in different ways. For example, Norway leading on electric ferries, on hydrogen, digital solutions, and Finland leading on bio-LNG, on propulsion technologies and port technologies. And the maritime sector is leading too. One of the great things in the COP26 outcome was the Clydebank Declaration for Green Shipping Corridors, which was an international coalition between ambitious governments to act together and demonstrate that maritime decarbonisation is not just possible, but it will also unlock new business opportunities and socio-economic benefits for communities across the globe. And business is responding with investment, with innovation, and with implementation. So I think that today is a really exciting opportunity the UK, Finland and Norway to work together on trade and investment on sustainability. It's really exciting to be exploring the key role of maritime within that. I'm delighted that we've got a partnership with a range of businesses, including Windship, Wärtsilä, Kongsberg Maritime and Lloyd's Register, and of course our chair, Tom Chant, from the Society of Maritime Industries. I think this is a great day for engaging together, for making sure that we are excited about the opportunities for sustainable maritime sector, that we're informed on how to do that, and that we agree concrete implementation for putting that into practice. So thank you very much indeed for being involved today. I hope you find it a really engaging session, and I look forward to hearing the outcomes. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you to Chris Barton. I hope he hasn't stolen all of our speakers' thunder there on all the different programs that are going underway. Trade commissions are very important in the UK system as they influence the activities of the in-country trade team. So it's good for us anyway to have the UK Trade Commissioner on board there. So thank you very much. Right, so first part of today, we have a representative from each country to tell us about their country vision, the support programs, timescales, and sort of interactions perhaps with the Clydebank Declaration as well. So our first speaker, could I please introduce Eero from the Finnish Ministry of Transport and Communications, give us their view on what's happening in Finland. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Tom, and thank you also. I want to thank the British Embassies in Helsinki and Oslo, the UK Department for International Trade and the Society of Maritime Industries for organizing this very topical event and for inviting me. This is a double pleasure for me as I've worked at both the Finnish Embassy in London and our embassy in Oslo, and miss both cities, but also Norwegian and British colleagues terribly. So this is as good as it gets nowadays, I guess. Let me just move to an all screen mode here. So here we go. I hope you can see the presentation there. I want to talk to you about decarbonizing shipping and clean maritime policies here in Finland. Here, first of all, you'll see greenhouse gas emissions from transport in Finland, and you'll notice that, of course, a majority of these come from road transport, and inland waterway transport and maritime transport account only for about 4%. But of course, in this respect, we also have to consider that these are domestic emissions. So, of course, especially in shipping, most of the emissions are accounted to the international part of things. So shipping going between countries and in both inside the EU and outside the EU. And if you would count those emissions here, of course, the share of shipping would be much higher. And there are very important negotiations going on at the IMO on these things. And also things happening, as you all know, on the EU side. I'll get to those later. Just wanted to say that year-round shipping is, of course, very, very important for Finland. The Baltic Sea is one of the busiest seas in the world, and 83% of all freight transportation in Finland is carried by sea. And good connections to world markets and effective logistical chains are something we rely on here in Finland. Finland is practically an island when it comes to shipping because we have the winter conditions here. Every winter, the northernmost parts of the Baltic Sea freeze over, and we have to ensure a level playing field for ice-class ships as well when it comes to international regulation. Here, another aspect I wanted to quickly touch upon when it comes to short sea shipping in the Baltic Sea. Short sea shipping is kind of a very important aspect of shipping to Finland as well, as the majority of goods to our ports come with or move between European Finland and other European states inside the Baltic Sea. So this is short sea shipping very much that we rely on. Also, this is important on the emission reduction aspect because Ro-Ro and Ro-Pax vessels that we have a lot here in Finnish traffic, but also in the Baltic Sea traffic, they are fairly, their emissions per transport work are higher than other vessel types. So this is kind of a special challenge that has to be solved in somehow, and I really wish that we can solve this with our Baltic colleagues and our European colleagues. Then, of course, some words about global and regional measures. As I already said, the IMO negotiations are going on, and we have the pleasure of having Mr. Svein Oftedal here, who heads the chairs the Intersessional Working Group on Greenhouse Gas Matters in the IMO. And just last week, MEPC 77 ended, where we had these very important topics of reducing GHG emissions from international transport, maritime transport on the table. And I have to say that we could have done more, and we will have to do more when it comes to these things. And I really hope that we get the going on and a good kind of a vibe and an atmosphere in these negotiations, as it is vital for global shipping. On the EU side, there's the Fit for 55 package, and here on the right-hand side, I have circled with red all those parts of the Fit for 55 package that have something to do with shipping, at least here from the Finnish side. So you can see that I've had to circle almost every single measure or directive that's there. This is only to underline that transport is very much in contact with other parts of the society, and we have to look at these things holistically. Also, I marked there the European Union strategy for the Baltic Sea region. Here in Finland, we see very much that as a tool and as a kind of frame for these things, how to do things, and HELCOM as well, the Helsinki Commission, on the aspect of how can we implement the international regulation coming from the IMO and the EU. How can we implement that best here in the Baltic Sea? And also wanted to mention the Council of Baltic Sea States, because Norway is now this year chairing that forum. So important we can get something, discuss these issues also on the CBSS. Then on the national side here in Finland, just in May, we published a government resolution on reducing GHG emissions from maritime and inland waterway transport. And this is a very comprehensive document that has about 30 measures. And the most important ones I've listed there, or kind of on a title level. So these are the titles of the government resolution. So of course, transition to alternative fuels is key. And then improving the energy efficiency of existing vessels and designing and building new low emission and eventually zero emission vessels. And thirdly, the management of maritime and inland waterway transport. How do we manage that so that the whole system supports this transition to cleaner fuels? And then what to do in ferry traffic and boating. I know that, for example, in Norway is doing a lot in ferry traffic along its coast. And fifth, carbon pricing and other market-based measures in international shipping. This is something we have to do on the international level in the IMO. And then also other international cooperation. So these regional and sub-regional organs that I already mentioned. Shipping is very international, so Finland is for a very wide international cooperation when it comes to maritime decarbonization. Ladies and gentlemen, to end my presentation, I wanted to quickly just kind of compare of what we have going, and to my knowledge, we are the three, Finland, Norway, and the UK are the three countries that have a specific green shipping plan. The UK has the Clean Maritime Plan published already in 2019. The Norway has the government's action plan for green shipping published also in 2019, and this year the Finnish government published this government resolution I talked to you about. And we all have our strengths, and if I got the Trade Commissioner right, you know, the Finnish strengths that he mentioned were bio-LNG or biofuels, propulsion technologies, and then port technologies. And Finland would be happy to keep discussing these issues both with UK and the Norway, and really hope that we can get something done together as the Clydebank Declaration, for example, can be a great platform. Also, the Declaration on Zero Emission Shipping by 2050 that we have all signed can be a great platform, and we should do all these things together that I've said there in the title there. This is an old title from when Finland was 100 years old. It might be a cliche, but still I wanted to highlight that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, and I'll really look forward for our discussion. Thank you.
Eero, thank you ever so much. You've been short and sharp on time there as well, so thank you very much indeed. Second speaker from Norway is Vold from the Norwegian Ministry of Climate and Environment. Over to you, Vold. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess you can see my screen now, and the first slide even.
Yes, we can see the slides. Just need to go to presentation view.
Oh, excuse me. Am I in presentation view now?
Perfect. Thanks very much. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so thank you very much. My name is Sophie Vold. I am a senior advisor at the Ministry for Climate and Environment in Norway, working in particular on green shipping and following the topic both domestically and internationally. And I'm stepping in for Sveinung Oftedal today, who got a calendar clash. So yeah, so you have to do with me. To start, it is important to keep with us the frames defining the environmental performance of shipping. There are two main elements defining this: regulations established by the governments and conditions established by the market. I will of course focus on the regulations established by governments and how they can contribute to improved environmental performance of shipping, and in particular how we work with this in a Norwegian context. However, regulations set at the international level through the IMO and also regulations set regionally, for instance through the EU, have a significant effect. This is also to say that what we do in Norway does not happen in a vacuum. So what are we doing in Norway? The fundament for our current work on green shipping can be found in the former government's action plan for green shipping from 2019, as mentioned by Eero. The action plan for green shipping from 2019 stated the aim of halving emissions from domestic shipping and fisheries by 2030 through stimulating the development and deployment of low and zero carbon solutions in all shipping segments. The action plan contained concrete follow-up actions for all shipping segments, ranging from assessing and introducing legal requirements for low and zero carbon solutions to financial incentives, support schemes, and public-private partnerships. As mentioned, the action plan was developed and adopted by the former government and only as a governmental or a government internal strategy, meaning it did not go through Parliament. However, when formulating the climate plan for 2021 to 2030, the government built on the action plan with regard to the shipping elements, and the climate plan for 2021 to 2030 has been presented and adopted by the National Parliament, hence providing a well-anchored basis for how we continue the work on green shipping domestically. And earlier this fall, we had a national election resulting in a change in Parliament. The new government produced a policy platform, Hurdalsplattformen, which now provides the frame for how this government wants to prioritize and work, including on shipping matters. So together with the Climate Action Plan for 2021 to 2030, these are now our guiding policy documents for how we work on green shipping. And so the ambition for halving emissions by 2030 is still the target, and the efforts to reduce emission from each shipping segment to achieve this target and ensuring a green fleet renewal is still the main task of our work. And so among other, the current government states in the Hurdalsplattform that it wants to introduce low and zero carbon requirements for several segments, including ferries, high-speed passenger vessels, offshore vessels, and service vessels used in aquaculture. And they also want to present a transitioning package for climate-friendly shipping. So where has this all taken us so far? When working with the action plan for 2019, we developed a barometer showing the status for green transition within domestic shipping as of 2017. And this was based on 3 parameters: emission of CO2 based on activity data, technology uptake of low and zero carbon technologies in the fleet, and the order book for the next 3-year period. The barometer was updated as part of the work that we did on the climate plan for 2021 to 2030, providing the status for 2019, which is now the one that you can see on the slide. And I apologize for the Norwegian, but we didn't have time to translate it before today. However, I think we can all still see that we are actually reducing emissions on the bottom left, and that there is an uptake of alternative low and zero carbon technologies in the middle, and that there also are orders of vessels in the order book having low and zero carbon technologies in the next 3 years. However, what the bars also show us is that the pace is clearly not fast enough compared to the 2030 target of halving the emissions. So the barometer is a very helpful tool in our work, as it provides valuable input on in the decision-making process. It tells us something about where we are and where we need to go. And we will now get an updated version of it by the end of the year, and this time also including information on status in research and development on low and zero carbon solutions. So to sum up this slide, there's a lot of information, but the main message is that this information is key in taking well-funded decisions and keep track of the overall development. And as mentioned in the beginning, what we do in Norway does not happen in a vacuum. We know that we need to succeed with the global transition of the shipping sector if we are to succeed domestically, and vice versa. The GHG situation, or emission situation, of international shipping is also showing that further effort is needed. And as you can see this illustrated here in the graph. We are not on track internationally either. If we are to succeed with the largest transition of the shipping sector of our time, cooperation is key, and we need to take actions together. So shipping is, as Eero also mentioned, by nature international. And the declarations already mentioned earlier, adopted at COP26, provide a very good fundament for cooperation among the UK, Finland and Norway in this context, and to build further on the cooperation that we already have. Firstly, through the zero emission shipping by 2050 declaration, we agree on the target. And secondly, the Climate Declaration provides a frame for how to think around the establishment of the first zero emission shipping routes necessary to get the transition going. The UK, Finland and Norway are perfectly situated to take on this task, and we look forward to continue the cooperation with you. And finally, I also just wanted to mention Mission Innovation and the zero emission shipping mission that was launched earlier this year. We take part in this together with the US and Denmark as co-leads, and the UK is a core member. And it's of course open for more if anybody else would want to join. And this takes kind of the same approach as the Climate Declaration, but on a more on a lower level. And all of these initiatives are, in our view, important to succeed. Thank you.
Sophie, thank you ever so much. I'm going to come back to you at the end, I think, around your Green Fleet Renewal piece. But anyway, next speaker is Paolo from the UK's Department for Transport. I'm going to hand you straight over to Paolo. Here we go.
Hopefully you can all see the presentation. Tom, can you see?
Yep, I can see it. Yep, all good.
Excellent. So thank you very much for that. As Tom mentioned, my name is Paolo. I'm responsible for domestic emission policy in DFT Maritime. Just a small disclaimer, I am not leading on international shipping emissions, so I'm stepping in for my colleague. So for me, this is a very interesting learning opportunity as well. And this meeting is really interesting. So what I'll try to do today is to provide you with, if this works, to an overview of the policy framework of clean maritime policy in the UK. how we are progressing specific initiatives, and I was asked to provide some more details around the Clean Maritime Demonstration Competition, and finally, how everything ties up as part of the Climate Declaration. So starting with the policy framework, now for us, we have a big challenge on the environment side. So transport in the UK is the largest emitter of greenhouse gases across the economy, and it is the only sector that is not going down. Within transport, domestic shipping emissions are quite important. So latest data suggests that domestic shipping alone produce more greenhouse gases than rail and buses combined. Now, from Carbon Budget 6, we're also considering international shipping as part of that, which means that the UK maritime sector, which is on one side responsible for 95% of our trade, is also responsible for almost 3 times the emissions produced by buses and rail in the UK. So we've got to do something, and we've got to do something now, because the lifespan of our vessels is around 30 years, and we need to deploy zero-emission vessels by 2025 to get to the target of a zero-emission fleet by 2050. So as someone mentioned before this presentation, these 10 years are really, really important for maritime decarbonisation. And so decarbonizing shipping is essential to meet net zero. So we do have a trajectory. So on the left-hand side, you see how achieving net zero in domestic shipping looks like in terms of megatons of CO2 emissions or reductions. And we know also, well, we have scenarios of how the fuel mix should look like to achieve net zero in domestic shipping. Those are all projections, and this is coming from the Clean Maritime Plan. Essentially, what is on the right-hand side, what the chart says, is that from the early 2030s, there should be a huge uptake of renewable fuels of non-biological origins, like, for example, ammonia, but also hydrogen and methanol, depending on how fuel prices are going to adjust in the next years. So the question then for us is also, and I'm glad that Tom is here, how we can make sure that the transition to zero-emission shipping is economically sustainable. So there is a manufacturing opportunity of investing in clean maritime technologies, for example, in the shipbuilding sector. Summarizing what this slide says, essentially, is that we do have a competitive advantage in small vessels like workboats, leisure vessels, and we do have a competitive advantage internationally on zero-emission technology powertrains like batteries, but also hydrogen and ammonia. So how do we harness all of this? There are problems to do that, and fundamentally, we do know there are, and I believe this is the same for other countries as well, a series of barriers to R&D and innovation in clean maritime. I'm not going to mention all of them, but one example is that in the maritime sector, at least in the UK, all actors are private, so no ship operators are going to invest in zero-emission technologies if they don't see the refueling infrastructure in place. But at the same time, no ports are going to invest in zero-emission refueling infrastructure if they don't see the demand. At the same time, there are, in the shipping sector in general, split incentives to invest between ship owners and charters, considering around 50% of the global fleet is chartered. Right? So the question is, how do we overcome all of this? Now, others before me mentioned the role of regulation, and we are exploring that. We do have a plan, and as mentioned, we started with a Clean Maritime Plan, which essentially is set up a series of interventions to do 2 things. One thing is to make sure that to achieve the ambition that by 2025, all new vessels designed for UK waters are zero-emission capable, and to make sure that by 2035, the infrastructure is there to support them. So we have implemented the Clean Maritime Plan, and we are now looking forward with the Transport Decarbonisation Plan, which has a section of maritime commitments on regulation, for example, setting up an indicative trajectory to net zero for the sector, a consultation on a phase-out date for non-zero emission vessels. What we do know is that a regulation on its own is unlikely to be successful. So we've been exploring also direct intervention with R&D investment in the maritime sector, which is what we've been doing, for example, with a Clean Maritime Demonstration Competition. Now, this is a chart which underpins the thinking behind the competition. Every time I use this chart, people get scared, and I keep using it. which says a lot about my presentation skills. But essentially what it says is that this is the innovation pathway that every innovator has to go through. Essentially, every one of them at some point, because of the investment done in new technologies, gets to the so-called valley of death, where they spend a lot of money on a new product. This product is, it functions, but it needs more investment to become commercial, right? So what government does with technology demonstrations is to plug the cash flow shortfall in the so-called valley of death, supporting innovators via much funding of R&D funding to get that product to commercial stage, which is what we are doing with the Clean Maritime Demonstration Competition, which was announced in November last year, as part of the Prime Minister's 10-point plan. Essentially, this is a £20 million R&D program supporting feasibility studies and initial technology trials in emerging clean maritime technologies in terms of vessels, fuels, and infrastructure. So this competition was oversubscribed. It demonstrated the capabilities of the UK maritime sectors and, importantly, the appetite to invest. So with an initial funding of £20 million, we've managed to raise investment proposals for £70 million. This is now ongoing. Just show some details here. So on the left-hand side, you see that the majority of winners from the CNDC is outside London and the southeast. And on the right-hand side, you can see a map of where the winners are. This map is really interesting because if you overlap that with places in the UK with different strengths in terms of R&D, you will see that the maritime investment in the maritime sector was able to leverage private investment in areas of the UK with high but also low R&D investment potential. So, and also demonstrated how much the maritime sector is linked up with a wider advanced manufacturing. There are a few other slides. I think we can share this presentation afterwards. I'll go through quickly, just to give a breakdown of technologies supported under feasibility studies and technology trials. And by the way, that was for us a real market research. For the first time, we were able to understand what exactly are the intentions of the wider industry, including the maritime sector, when it comes to investment in clean maritime technologies. Now, for us, the question is then, we have identified a UK clean maritime supply chain. Now the question is, how do we project that internationally? And the work that my colleagues on the international side of my division have been doing has been really, really useful. So you all mentioned the role of the Clyburn Declaration in effectively bringing people together, right? So what we've been doing has been, on one side, immediately build a coalition of industry frontrunners with Operation Zero. Is 28 industry players in the UK, most of which winners of the Clean Maritime Demonstration Competition, which shows the link with the domestic supply chain. Focusing on accelerating the decarbonisation of offshore wind vessels in the North Sea. But then, in the medium term, how do we institutionalize that as part of international partnership via the Clyburn Declaration? 22 states signing up to the creation of green corridors. I think is at least 6 by 2030, and then that will increase after that. The idea is that we have live places across different countries where we can test and deploy new technologies. So from my perspective, from my specific perspective in my job, is also trying to understand how, for example, the creation of green corridors can turbocharge investment in technologies via the Clean Maritime Demonstration Competition or via a new multi-year program that we will launch after the Clean Maritime Demonstration Competition. And also another question could be, should we consider and support specific investment in port infrastructure where there is a green corridor being planned between the UK and one of our international partners? So essentially, how do we operationalize Clyburn using strategically R&D investment? And that could fall part. I'm very keen to discuss with you how that could look like. The idea is, just to wrap up my presentation, is to essentially, yes, establish a series of routes in the near term to support the IMO agenda, but also create living labs where we can test those technologies. And that will go through, that is being delivered via an agreement, a high-level agreement that has been signed up at COP. I say, I am very keen to explore more with you how we can operationalize Clydebank, and that's it. That's just a list of the signatories. That's it from me.
Paolo, as always, thank you very much indeed. Very interesting, great to get that overview what the UK is doing. So all the policy people, if you could sort of stay in the background, we're now going to be looking at the organisations putting together the different technologies. We're starting off with Lloyd's Register. Charles, just give us a sort of with their decarbonisation hub. It's going to give us like the higher view of what's happening within the industry. So Charles, over to you.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, hopefully my slide is available. So yeah, firstly, just to introduce myself, I'm Charles Haskell. I'm the Programme Manager of the Maritime Decarbonisation Hub, which is a programme jointly set up between Lloyd's Register Foundation and the Lloyd's Register Group, with the mission to accelerate the safe and sustainable decarbonisation of the maritime industry. So just to give an overview of the way we're thinking, and aligning this with other trajectories as well. But if we take the transition curve, we need to go through an energy transition by 2050. But now previously, if we looked back 3 years ago to 2018, we had the IMO with the target of 50% by 2050 compared to 2008 levels by absolute terms. But what we've seen, particularly over COP and over the last year, is this ambition accelerating and moving. 3 years ago, the 50% level was a challenge, and now that rhetoric has very much moved 2050 to be zero by 2050. And we saw this on a few discussions at COP with the First Movers Coalition. The Clydebank Declaration is moving into this area, and the Declaration on Zero Emission Shipping by 2050, of which I believe 14 states signed up to that, including the UK and Norway. So we've got the government push on that side, but also we have what we were seeing in COP, which was particularly relevant, was also the non-state actors having that drive. So of particular interest was also COSEV, which is I think 9 brands. You had IKEA, Amazon, Unilever, Patagonia, amongst them, signing up to have zero emission shipping, or all their goods shipped zero emission vessels by 2040. So the line has moved from 50% 2050 to certainly being net zero by 2050, and then some state actors and non-state actors moving the dial towards 2040. So it's very much a reality. But then the important thing about this is this isn't going to be a crossover in one day. We've got to scale it back. So while we're talking about 5% by 2030, how is the Clydebank Declaration going to help this? It's very much getting those early movers. We've got to hit 5% by 2030 to enable that transition curve, so that by 2050 we are well on the journey. So this is why the Clydebank is interesting, but it's also important that the purpose of the Clydebank Declaration is to be scalable, for the learnings of that to be taken into other industries, other areas, and scaled up. So it's not about niche corridors, it's about widely adoptable corridors as well. So taking that and the way we're looking at this as well, this is not just about the vessels. We have projects ongoing at the moment, which could have a deep sea vessel on the water by 2024, running on zero emission fuel, running on ammonia. However, the fuel may not be available, and the challenges certainly aren't just on board the ships. It's about the bunkering and the ports integration. It's about the production and the conversion of the fuel, as well as the resources. And this is the other part of COP outside the maritime industry, which we need to look at, is where are the commitments coming from? Where could the fuels be available and how? So that's about the availability and the technology. The other part is on the safety as well. When we look at previous energy transitions, we moved to a safer fuel, an easier to store fuel, and a cheaper fuel. But in terms of safety, when we're looking at the new fuels, we're talking about hydrogen and ammonia in particular, there's considerable safety considerations to be made there. And that ties into a number of other projects we're doing. One of the foremost of that is at the moment the collaboration we're doing with the Mercer McKinley Miller Centre for Zero Carbon Shipping on an ammonia quantitative risk assessment on board 3 ship designs, and really delving in to look at the safety, because an incident in safety either on board the vessel or even at the port side could have a significant impact into the adoption of a fuel and therefore impact the energy transition. So within the Maritime Decarbonisation Hub, we're looking across the whole supply chain and really looking across technology readiness, the community readiness, policy, and the investment readiness. And we're building that model up. It's available to see as a shameless plug at the top there. But this is also leading the way how we're picking projects and how we unlock the challenges going forwards. So what we have seen, the technology readiness overall is the highest. Marine Solutions are being validated. The Clean Maritime Demonstration competition has also been very good at this and selecting projects, and we are involved from the Decarbonisation Hub on some of those projects, particularly for the port side and the infrastructure projects, both at Port of Grimsby and also Portsmouth International Port. When we look at the community readiness, as discussed, yeah, the policies, the levels are currently low. The policies are coming into place at the moment. We saw increased ambition at COP, and this isn't just, as we say, about the policy, it's also about that societal pressure now as well. And we're seeing that through the COSEV agreement, as I mentioned earlier, but also other levers and people being more selective about the products they choose going forwards. But what was very interesting was when we built up the model was we had a low investment readiness level ratings for nearly all of the zero carbon fuels across the different supplies of different stages of the supply chain. So these fuels are currently more expensive than fossil fuels. There's uncertainty on the fuel relative to competitiveness in the long term, and the commercial proposition has not been formulated. So we've taken this, and from the result of this, we then have done a project or a case study to build a framework. So whilst this is not Europe-based, but we use this as a framework, we looked at a fleet of container ships operating in Southeast Asia, 222 vessels in total. The output of these vessels is roughly 70% of the UK domestic fleet. And so we've looked at this fleet, and then we've looked at the energy transition for that fleet. We're not picking one fuel against another. We're looking at the transition. So it's no longer about which fuel they go, which transition pathway do the vessels take. And this will then be a potential for a first mover. So yeah, we're looking at where the fuel comes from, what the cost of that fuel potentially will be in order to enable the economic development case to take place. And then we've looked at the port. We can look at the port infrastructure of that, and also the vessel ages, when they would need to retrofit and when they would need to be built and in operation as a pure zero emission vessel. So that's part of the work we're doing. We've created a framework to that now, which you can then apply to other green corridors and be able to apply an economic model to comparisons between fuels for those green corridors. So on that note, I'd like to say thank you very much, and I look forward to the questions later.
Yeah, Charles, thank you ever so much. Nice. The TRL, CRL, and IRL. I like those. So I will be checking out that link. Thank you very much indeed. Right, handing over straight away to Marta from Kongsberg, who's the Director of Sustainability. Marta, over to you.
Very much. Hopefully you can all see my presentation and technologies with us this evening. Thank you. So thank you so much. It is an honor to be here sharing our perspectives on cross-border decarbonization for our industry. So as you mentioned, my name is Marta Tildum. I am Director of Sustainability for Kongsberg Maritime. And I would just start it off by saying that this importance of cross-nation and cross-business collaboration cannot and should not be underestimated, because shipping is, as you all know, a truly global industry. And it has for all times created these clusters of innovation and collaboration. And just to take it down, take my hometown as an example. It is a small town on the west coast of Norway. It rains, it is windy, the mountains are steep and they're rather harsh. It's not a perfect climate to live in. But we had fish. And the fishermen, they understood that if they collaborated, they would together produce enough catch for there to be somewhere to deliver this fish. And again, someone would build their vessels and someone would provide equipment to these vessels. All of them relied on each other to survive. Then my hometown took the same approach, developing vessels for offshore industry, for cruise industries and science vessels. And now we must stand together, not just my hometown, but the entire industry and across nations to deliver on the biggest challenge to date. And as everyone has mentioned, the ocean was at the center stage of COP26. It was quite extraordinary to see. It was not a question on whether or not shipping should decarbonize. It was a question on how and how fast. Our industry is becoming even more important in the years ahead, and I am extraordinarily proud to work in this industry and with the solutions that we can provide. Right. But first, just some words on the Kongsberg Group. We were founded in 1814. We've grown into a company of more than 10,000 employees. We live in 40 countries, and one of them is Norway, Finland, and the UK. And we have 3 main business areas with around 25 billion NOK of revenues. But most importantly, we are an ocean company. 80% of our revenue is connected to the ocean. We have the broadest portfolio of products in the maritime industry, because we deliver products and services to onshore and offshore, merchant, subsea, navy, coastal marines, aquaculture, and more. But we're also a house of systems integration. And now we need to combine all these skills in finding the best solution for zero emission. Because there are several means you can do to reduce your greenhouse gas footprints. And the most efficient is, of course, on the lower right corner of this triangle. Use clean energy sources. And important to say there, they need to be clean well to wake, including the production process of the fuel. And there are several really good candidates. Wind is rather interesting and will be touched on later today. We have just a couple of weeks back also signed an agreement with a company called Norse Power to integrate rotor sails. And what I think is quite nice is that you combine traditional technology like our controllable pitch propellers with this new technology, and you get much better effect of these new technologies coming in. In addition, you see batteries and shore power. Of course, that's the far best conversion rate there is, but it has setbacks, for instance, for longer distances. And the next speaker will then elaborate more on these possibilities of new fuels. But common to most of these solutions is that they're more expensive than the current. So minimizing the energy consumption through, for instance, hull cleaning. We've developed a robot there that will drastically reduce the need for hull cleaning. You can also use means as route and speed planning. And all of these would be of better and higher financial importance in the future than it would be today. Similarly, maximizing the conversion rate through optimal propulsion systems, maybe delivered in Finland, recovering waste heats, using batteries again for peak shaving, will continue to have really strong business cases moving forward. But as you see, the menu of solutions are quite broad. And for some of these initiatives, the onshore infrastructure and availability of clean energy will be the tipping point. And as a technology provider, we need cross-nation regulations and standardization for us to work with our customers to find our best solutions. So again, shipping is cross-national. And I'm very happy to see that, for instance, the Clyde Back Declaration is tracking on with more and more countries. So that will be an exciting one. So at the moment, we're running several rather exciting programs, trying to recover from what was it called, the valley of death, mentioned by Paolo, to have full-scale projects for low carbon and zero emission. Some of these I've summarized on this slide. And the High Seas 3 is a program for pressurized green hydrogen. It was supported by the EU Horizon 2020, but it is a full-scale and scalable hydrogen solution. And I'm very happy to say that we're closing in on the last phases on this project. So for those of you who are really curious on hydrogen, please do reach out after this call, and I'll provide you with some more findings and some more details moving forward. We also have some ship and high ship on hydrogen. And it was mentioned earlier that Norway has really looked into hydrogen as one of the solutions to especially short sea and domestic shipping. But then again, we have the now sailing Yara Birkeland, as well as ASKO, targeting the quite exciting combination of autonomy with fully electrical vessels. So also there, what I find is quite exciting is that these projects are done together with the cargo owner. And the cargo owner has really pushed us as a technology provider to deliver something directly for them. Other initiatives like the COSEV was mentioned, and I think the strength of the cargo owners would be really important moving forward. But we have on the ocean around 100,000 vessels sailing. All of these initiatives that I showed you was new builds. Kongsberg has, as I said, the broadest portfolio of products for the maritime industry. That means that 30,000 of these vessels are sailing with our equipment. And that is a big responsibility for us. And it also has taught us that there is not one silver bullet when it comes to green shipping, because each vessel is different and each operation is different. There might be 30,000 silver bullets. And upgrading the sailing fleet is still a huge potential. But sometimes we need a little bit of an external push to get it started. So take the Hurtigruten vessels as seen on the screen. This was a smart tender designed by the Norwegian government, requiring a 25% reduction in CO2 to get the contract moving forward. Together with Hurtigruten, we then sat down and we were lucky enough to have a year of data on these type of vessels. So we could combine our best product experts with building up simulator models of last year's operation with wind, weather, routes, etc. And then we could test all of these different technologies and find the best fit solution. In the end, we introduced batteries, renewed the propulsion systems, we had new engines in and new control systems. And in additionally, the vessel itself was completely upgraded and renewed to provide this modern experience that the passengers want. And that is also important when it comes to sustainability, to think whether or not we should scrap or build new or prolong the life. So as mentioned, these vessels had 25% reduction in fuel and emissions, and a significant prolonging of the lifetime. And the cost of all of this was around 20% of building a new vessel. But what's common to everything is that the future power plants might be more complex. And optimizing the future fuel and future vessels, will be more complex. Like we saw on the Hurtigruten, it was more complex after we were done. So one of the important things is to not just use the data before we upgrade and in finding the best solution, but also in helping the operator and following up throughout its lifetime. So we do believe it's really important to assure working tools to minimizing the workload on board, making sure that the onboard operator have good contact with the onshore operators. And EcoAdvisor is one such product, tying together efficient power plants of the future with the operator. And on that one, I would like to move to a more deep dive discussions on the true heart of the vessel, and our next speaker from Wärtsilä.
Hello, right. Oh, it's gone a little dark there. Kai, here we go. Yeah, sorry, Kai. I just missed that little transition there, the handover. Yeah. So over to you, Kai, from Wärtsilä. One sec.
Yes, thank you. That was a real nice pass from you, Marte. Came very quickly, so I have to see if I share now my screen. I hope you can see it now.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, so as Marte said here that I will now more from Wärtsilä's point of view go into what we do with our engines in this area. You know, Wärtsilä is of course looking into the whole ship solution, what we can do regarding these issues that Marte was presenting. But in my presentation now, as I am a engine developer, always been, and I think I will always be, and looking at the new fuels now that we have coming, I will present that, how the future can look like and how prepared we are. If we look at the future, what we know is that there is a transition ongoing. That is, I think, the only certain that we have at the moment. And now when Wärtsilä is looking at this, where to go with the transition, we really say that we will follow the transition by being good on the engines today, and then at the same time be prepared for the future. And how we see the future fuels is that today, as was shown also, I think, by Paolo, that today we have heavy fuel, diesel and gas, and then later on we will see that they will come drop-in fuels that can be blended in the diesel or in the gas, like a biodiesel or a biogas or so, and then they can be immediately taken in, and then further on we will take in new fuels that will not fit in the same fuel tank but will fit also in the same engine and can be then burned together with the other fuel that we have had from before. And sometimes then after some years, if it's after 10 years or 15 or 20 years, I don't know, but then the world will be ready for utilizing net zero carbon fuels, and then we will also have the possibility to use it in our engines. What do we need for that then? Yeah, here I have on the left side, we need a multi-fuel engine, because we cannot really say what will be the future fuel and when will it come. I agree with Marte here. You said, are there 50,000 silver bullets? And I also agree with that. And I would also add that there is a new silver bullet every day. So if you have bet on something today, it could be the winner, but it's not the winner after 5 years or so. And that's why we have built up our engine program, so that we look at two main streams with the fuels that we have today. So we have LNG or natural gas as one mainstream fuel, and then we have diesel or heavy fuel as the second mainstream fuel. And both of these are today fossil fuels. They can then be made as bio or as synthetic in the future. And if that will happen, then we can say that we are already prepared and have been for quite a long time, because we don't need any new infrastructure on the vessel. The performance for the engines, the performance from the vessel will be similar or exactly the same as it has been before. Then of course, if we go to real decarbonization, because here you will have a decarbonization on the paper, but really from the stack of the vessel and from the engine, there will be just as much CO2 emissions from biodiesel as it will be from fossil diesel. Then it's just up to the legislation how you compare these two. But if we really want to get, and that we want to get down in CO2 emissions, then we utilize fuels that don't have carbon in them, and that is then mainly hydrogen and ammonia. And here I would say that from Wärtsilä's point of view, we have been looking that ammonia is more for the marine business because it's easier to store and transport than hydrogen, and then hydrogen has been more for the land-based power plants that we have. And then last, here also you can see that this is light in the beginning and it's getting dark by 2050. With this we mean that we can already today start to blend in hydrogen or ammonia in these main fuels, and then when time is right, when the legislation is right, when the cost availability all are in there, then we can utilize the ammonia and or hydrogen to full. Then we have also one fuel that we are looking at, or alcohols, methanol, ethanol. These are also being looked at as they can also be produced as green fuels. And we have solutions for them also. How do we do this? Is to be flexible. We don't want to, or we cannot choose what fuel to be used now or in the future. So we instead make the engine so it can utilize all the fuels that are coming. And here I have just a list on the right side here on the fuels that I have been using now here on my engine. This used to be a diesel engine a couple of years ago, running only on diesel and heavy fuel. And now today we have been running on most of these fuels and still continuing to develop this for the fuels. And also here, the engine doesn't know if it's a biofuel or synthetic or fossil. So when we test, for example, ammonia, even if it's now not green ammonia, for the technology development, this doesn't really matter so much because the results will be the same. It's only then to wait for the fuel and to get it in. Just an example how to go forward in the future. If you today have designed a vessel or an engine for running on LNG, then you have fuel tanks with LNG, and you have control and you have the engine. When you want and you get ammonia, then you can change. So one of the fuel tanks is ammonia and the other one is gas, and mix them before the engine and then continue. And then in the end, when you don't want to use LNG anymore and you think you are getting the ammonia, then you can utilize both tanks as ammonia and continue with pure ammonia operation. And if this is now then within 1 or 10 or 20 years, I don't know, but the system is already there just to take in. We are also looking at that the engine is not only the engine. We are also looking at the fuel handling, in this case, how to get the fuel. And as was said by Charles here, that in a safe way, this is very important, especially when we have the discussion about ammonia and hydrogen as fuel. Both are, ammonia is very toxic and hydrogen is very explosive. So here we are looking very much into the legislation and what to do regarding bunkering and storing. And then the engine system, how to control the engine with different fuels, changing all the time or optimizing for one. And finally also looking at the after treatment system, of the exhaust. So there will always be some exhaust that has some kind of emissions, and if we cannot get rid of them in the engine, then we will have after treatment system to take care of that. So looking at the areas where we like now to cooperate with you all here, and where I see that we already do. Now I'm looking at this from the engine's point of view, but I think you have had the same things here, looking from different point of views. But first of all is the legislation. What can you do? What should you do? And is it the same if you do it in Norway or Finland or UK? This, I think, is very important. So we get a legislation that we can trust on, so we can develop according to that. Then, of course, it's what I call the real work to make the systems, the fuel system, the fuel handling, engines, exhaust and after treatment system, etc., and to make them good and to make them affordable and robust. Then the following that has not been talked about today that is very important. When new fuels come in, we will need a lot of training and protection equipment for people that should be used and can be used. And the training, especially for operators and the service people, is a big thing now that we are looking into how to get them fully trained before the first vessel is out there. And then, of course, taking in new fuels, taking in new systems, there could be child diseases. So we are really looking at having already from the beginning a very robust and safe operations on vessels. And here we are really looking at the multi-fuel solutions so that we can have a fallback fuel if one fuel is not available or if something else is happening. And then the cooperation, what we will need and what has been discussed here, that we will need the new fuel. So where can we get it, both geographically and how you can get it on the vessel, and of course then the cost of the new fuel. We know that it will be more expensive to make these new alternative fuels, but there could be then incentives that are not making them more expensive to use. I think that is, yeah, I have one more here then. Yeah, where are we now? If we look at bio-LNG or synthetic methane, synthetic LNG, we have already been here for 20 years. So nothing to be done from the vessel side. It's only to wait for the fuel. Methanol, green methanol, Wärtsilä has already had one engine out, one vessel out with Wärtsilä engines, Stena Germanica, Sweden, Germany, already 6 years. So we show that the technology is working, and this is a good demonstration of utilizing methanol. And then ammonia and hydrogen we are now developing, and the plan is that we will have the technology ready for ammonia already after 1.5 years, so we can go out for demonstrating on a real vessel, real operation. And hydrogen, we have already said 5 years ago that we can blend in up to 25% hydrogen, and now we are also developing our engines for pure hydrogen operation. But this will then take somewhat longer. Thank you. This is ending my presentation.
Kai, thank you ever so much. I mean, that's an incredible amount of investment going on all those different engine types, isn't it? So thank you for sharing that. Didn't realise some of the trials have been going on so long as well. Graham, over to Graham now from Windship. So with a
great stuff. Thanks, Tom.
Brilliant. Here we go.
There we go. We're up and running. Great. Okay, well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to try and take this opportunity to explain our zero emission solution for the shipping world. So Windship Technology, we're a British company founded in 2012 to develop modern wind-powered solutions for the bulker and tanker market. And this has led through our research to our zero emission ship concept. Now, the use of up-to-date wind technology for shipping has been gathering pace, and as Marta has said, over the last 10 years. But unlike some alternative fuel proposals, wind has not been seen as a full solution, but as an additional energy-saving device. So by the end of this presentation, I hope you will see that wind can be considered as a primary system and also be the key element in a zero-emission solution. So this image shows our wind rig concept. It's our first decision, our real change from traditional sails was to eliminate soft sails, as the chances of adoption by the industry we felt was very low. They have poor longevity and are prone to damage. And then the second key decision was to ensure the system was easy to operate. Simple, robust elements that are fully automated from the ship's bridge and require no intervention on deck when at sea. The selection of the solid wing sails was also on the back of seeing them provide tremendous performance for leisure sailing craft. Anyone who watches the high-tech sailing and America's Cup world will have seen the speeds that these craft can do. And of course, aircraft use wings very effectively as well. So sailing craft, and then seeing these used and how they deliver power in the offshore wind department, which has given us a basis for where we go from. And that offshore wind has allowed us to piggyback on the materials and production methods and supply chain that has been developed by this industry really over the last 30 years. So as you can imagine, we've done multiple iterations of the potential wing combinations, and we've done that with CFD and our partners. And this established that whilst high lift coefficients can and need to be achieved with wings, it is surface area that is needed to develop the required ship thrust. So the final solution was that of a tri-winged rig, which you can think of this as effectively turning a single 100-metre high rig into a 36-metre high solution that can be more easily handled and controlled. And the performance of this rig has been verified through CFD, wind tunnel testing, and the Wilson unit of the University of Southampton. Now, I've stated that the rig is powerful, yet I should clarify that. If we fit 3 of these 36-metre rigs, as shown here, to a Panamax Kamsarmax size vessel, so 80-odd thousand tonnes, we can provide 100% of the required thrust in 25 knots of breeze. So we are therefore sailing the vessel at this point, and it's not wind assist, but wind propulsion. The solution is scalable as well for vessel size. Not only can you vary the number of rigs, but we have designed a 48-metre rig and have outlined designs for a 60-metre. Now, durability has been of paramount importance in our design process, with materials and components selected from the wind energy industry, as I've said, and this has led to the rig gaining an approval in principle from DNV. So this is an overview of the wind propulsion part of the story. So why did a company called Windship decide to look at the whole drivetrain issue? Well, the reason stems from the power the rigs can provide to the ship, which is forcing the existing engine and propeller system way outside of its usual operating envelope. This means we're not going to achieve all of the emission gains possible unless this area is addressed. This schematic shows our proposed overall drive solution. Our design centres around the switch to an electric drive system. These exist in lots of places, but bear with me. The electric drive allows us to provide variable torque at variable revolutions to the propeller, and then the propulsion added at that point can work in harmony with the wind. The move to electric propulsion allows us to add in solar power where the vessel geometry and route works, and indeed other green technologies such as batteries can be added in on the same system. The current design has a number of diesel generators providing the electrical energy required for the motor. This modular approach allows the system to be flexible, switching off engines that are not required to ensure that the remaining ones operate effectively. Then, as we are using fossil fuel, We've worked with a company called Calix with their recast system, which captures the CO2 through an exothermic reaction, which allows us to recover further energy from the exhaust through a steam cycle. So let's have a brief look at each of these system components. Firstly, solar. I mean, clearly not having to burn fuels would reduce emissions. So alongside the wind propulsion, we believe that solar can provide a useful addition to ships, especially tankers, where large areas of deck space are available. On bulkers, there is a concern over damage and during loading and unloading, which we need to investigate, and potentially use of these panels in sheltered areas, such as the superstructure, would be a start. We have commenced work with one of the global manufacturers of these panels, and we are conducting some initial tests. The carbon capture and heat recovery system is the key to a zero-emission exhaust. The system works through the CO2 reacting with lime in the exhaust system. This reaction creates limestone and releases energy, which is recovered through a series of heat exchanger circuits to produce steam. The steam then runs through a three-stage steam turbine, which in turn powers one of the new electrical generators. The effect of this is that a recovery of up to 40% of the original engine power can be injected back into the drive system. Now, whilst this system deals with the CO2, it also eliminates the SOx, NOx, VOCs and particulate matter. But the explanation of that probably requires longer than the 10 minutes we've got here. The lime and the limestone are stored in the yellow hoppers in this image, and the bunkering of the calcium oxide in the early stages would be ideally suited to initiatives like the Green Corridors, as been discussed at the Clydebank Declaration. I should also highlight in the bottom left of this image is the electric motor. It's designed by a UK company and currently in use in military equipment. It is highly efficient and can operate underwater, and the system allows us to keep the remaining equipment at main deck level. Just a quick note again on the diesel electric generators, they will all sit on flat racks. These are the grey items, if you can see them in the picture, and can be slid into position through the superstructure sides. So this provides a simplified construction sequence, the ability to swap engines for repair and maintenance, and also, as we move into future fuels, the ability to switch to a new system without having to completely rebuild a ship, which currently has a large two-stroke engine. Now, the Winship Complete Drive system has been analysed by DNV through their Cosmos programme, and the zero-emission exhaust has been verified. Let's have a quick look at the power. I mentioned we should have we're into wind propulsion, not just wind assist. So we can see here, and we use averages for wind. So at times this vessel will be sailing, but on average, we expect to get 35 to 40% of the power from the wind rigs. And as you can see, wind and fossil fuels are providing close to an equivalent amount of power, with the carbon capture system providing the remainder. The solar we've put in there, it's not added into the first percentages, but just as an option as it gets used. So all sounds good so far, but does it actually make economic sense? We've run an analysis of the economics of this on a Kamsarmax on 3 transoceanic trade routes, loaded and in ballast through all 4 seasons. And this has shown an average fuel requirement of 8 tonnes per day, compared with perhaps the best ships that are out there of this class at around 20 tonnes a day. And at worst, we expect an equivalent OPEX cost comparable to the existing vessel, whilst this emitting no CO2. And this analysis does not include any benefits that could come from carbon credits that in various systems to be discussed and agreed. Another view of the economics of the system is provided in the table here. And here we're showing the cost of motive power in dollars per megawatt hour. And so based on the projected costs of fuels in 2030, and they are all over the place, but we had to use the IMO GHG report, the 4th one, to get our basis. And this shows that our zero emission solution, we expect to be at around $76 per megawatt hour, compared to the current benchmark of 74 for very low sulfur fuel oils. So we're roughly equivalent in price, as we said, but obviously emitting no CO2. And what we've also done is shown prospectively some of the future fuels, which again shows the increase in price likely to happen with these fuels, and really drives home the fact that whilst we champion the wind propulsion, if you can save using these fuels by having wind provide 35 to 40% of your power, you're going to be in a good place. So finally, just a quick summary. As I said, we have a full Windship solution. It provides ships with OPEX costs equivalent to or better than current ships for our target market, whilst eliminating no emissions. And we are at the stage in our development where we are seeking funding and technical collaborations to move this from concept to reality. So thank you for listening and look forward to the questions.
Graham, thank you ever so much. And yeah, great graphics and a great vision there from Windship. If I could get everyone from the panel back in the room, so to speak, that would be great. Thank you. And there's been a few questions in the chat. I will try and sort of summarise those, but I was just going to launch in with one to start with around in the way that, for me, from the discussions here, we've seen that does the Clydebank Declaration actually enable the speeding up of investment? At the moment, we've got this VHS Betamax moment of where do you put your money? What's your favourite? Does having two ends of the puzzle, you know, one in the UK, for example, and one in Norway, does that enable us to get a faster trialing and get that towards the scalable solution there? So any views from the panel on that? I might just look at Charles actually as you're moving there, because you mentioned the scalable side there. So Clydebank and speeding up the process.
So no, it's a good question, and I suppose the devil is in the detail with how the Clydebank Declaration is going to work. But the first step is the commitment from the governments, and then they've got to work on how to de-risk and get the investment into the supply chain. As I said, predominantly you've got the shippers, you've got the investment required there, but then you've got the port infrastructure and how to get the port infrastructure working. So if you can get two ports working between each other, to have the fuel infrastructure in place, the safety standards as well as for the acceptance of the fuel and the bunkering. The fuels are going to be less dense, so it may require bunkering at both sides, but it's to get those early movers working. And then hopefully once you've got once you've got one corridor opening, you may find a link into another corridor as well, and then it starts to spread as well. So I mean, Clydebank Declaration, first step is really for the governments to allow that investment to flow in and allow those first movers to de-risk and move forward.
I think that sort of begins to answer John Skelton's question in the chat as well about, you know, where does the supply chain get the confidence to invest as well. So any other views from the panel on this subject? No.
Tom, am I supposed to be part of the panel?
Yes, you are, Paolo. Come on.
Yeah, sorry guys, by the way, I'm replying to a flurry of emails, so try to do a series of things at the same time. So yes, I totally agree. The issue for us is that we shouldn't be seen as picking winners. So I'll take a step back. The maritime sector has an issue, as a fantastic resource, but an issue at the same time, which is basically every zero emission technology or low emission technology can find a place in the maritime sector, which means that it is very difficult for us to do, like, for example, people in the automotive sector, they say battery technology is the future because virtually the industry has already decided that battery is how you decarbonize cars and vans. Or if you think about aviation, today there's a big discussion around sustainable aviation fuels because there's no other technology that you can deploy now to reduce emissions in aviation. In maritime, it all depends where you're looking at in the fleet. Are you looking at domestic shipping? You're looking at workboats? Are you looking at fisheries? Or are you looking at deep sea shipping? It's completely different. So rather than having a silver bullet, what we can do is having an intelligent strategy, which for government, all of them is very difficult because it means striking the right balance between knowing what you're talking about for different sectors of the fleet and providing a clear steer to industry on that, but also make sure that you as government are not picking winners, because it is not our job. What we do is setting standards. Okay. Then on top of that, there's another point, which is how do you make sure that the system is predictable enough for industry to invest? So you do that via policy, and all of us have plans that says a clear direction. Then you do that via investment as well. And but again, the question here, and then I'll close this, but essentially from a Clydebank perspective is how do we make sure that intervention from different governments is coordinated so that it makes sense from an international perspective? Yeah, very much. Yeah. Yeah, there's no point you all three countries, well, all the 22 countries, signatories, creating their own little pots and nothing connecting. So, Eero and Sophie, could I just ask, in your, is that a similar approach to as Paolo's just described in not picking winners?
Yeah, I think very much so. As Paolo said, technology neutrality, I think all these three countries have in common that, we want to be technology neutral and we cannot pick any winners. But I think politically what's important here also is that, we're kind of committed on the political level of creating these green corridors before we're kind of pushed to that by the IMO or by the European Union, so that we're kind of showing political will to do this. And I think it's absolutely great that we have now the UK and Norway doing this now, even though they're not part of the EU, but they're part of this continent's shipping policies. So it's very important that the UK and Norway are working together with us on this. Thanks.
Brilliant.
And from our side too, just to follow up on what Eero and Paolo have said, technology neutrality stands strong within our way of thinking and acting as governments. However, I think that the Clydebank Declaration, as Eero said, states a very clear political will and signal, and now it's up to the follow-up actions and making sure that we get those public-private partnerships going and the cross-border element of that. And we think that can really provide a push to get those first decarbonized shipping routes going, which we will need to keep the momentum and to start the transition.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sophie. Perhaps while I have the policy people in the room, I was quite curious from the industry standpoint. We always want our governments to be doing more and more for industry, don't we? So we're very that's our role in life. So you've all outlined your policies, but are you able to put some figures around the level of support and how long the programs are lasting? So Paolo outlined the Clean Maritime Demonstration Competition. That was I think 55 projects supported to the tune of £23 million. Is there is it easy to put some figures against this for you?
So it's 55 projects delivered by a series of consortia of 208 winners across the UK for a total allocated so far of £23 million.
Yep. Okay. And Sophie, I particularly wanted to ask around the Green Fleet Renewal Programme, how that works as well, because that's an interesting project.
Yes, I'm happy to go a bit deeper into that, and also regarding the level of support and from the Norwegian side, it's kind of hard to put a specific figure on it, because we have some schemes that target emission reductions as such, so and where shipping projects are eligible, and then we have some more specific schemes targeting the shipping segments more particularly, but those are smaller in scale. But regarding the Green Fleet Renewal Programme, that's within the remit of the Green Shipping Programme, which is a public-private partnership established in 2015. And they have ever since been working to mature and promote green fleet renewal projects with innovative technologies and working together with both the whole value chain. So from the goods owner to the shipping actors and technology providers, and so coupling the value chain has provided some results as it enables the actors to enter into more long-term contracts and commit for longer periods of time, and hence it takes down some of the risk in investing and moving towards new low and zero carbon technologies. So they are doing great work in that. And then this is kind of one part of the work that we do. So Green Fleet Renewal, of course, also has the side of getting old vessels out of the market. And so for incentivizing that, the government has a condemnation scheme providing support for taking old and ineffective vessels out of the market. And then we have the Green Shipping Program with a public-private partnership, kind of maturing projects. And then when trying to, the maturing of project also needs to be funded in the end when they get to realization. And so that's where the broader support scheme come in to play. And we don't have it all figured out yet, so we still work on that investment gap. But there are some schemes that can provide some support, like the large Enova scheme that we have in Norway.
Okay, that'll be brilliant. Thank you, Eero. Your level of funding and sort of the timescale on that.
Yes, well, I in addition to national measures, I'd like to remind also the UK and Norwegian actors on the plethora of different EU funding methods. So, for example, the Horizon Europe and its waterborne transport partnership, offers a lot of potential, a lot of investing opportunities and support opportunities, if you're cooperating with the member state and member states kind of companies. So that is one thing. And the other thing is that, we are all, I think, all three countries, one of the, or belong to the very few amount of countries, high income countries that still have some kind of shipbuilding activity. So of course this, cooperation in shipbuilding and what we can do there together to kind of get the next generation of vessels online already now, so that we don't have to go back, see 20, 30 years now that, okay, we back then we built the wrong vessels. So we have to look at the fuel flexibility in our support to our shipbuilding industry as well. And I think that is one of the priorities, at least here in Finland, the green transition in shipbuilding as well, where public money is also put somewhat into. But I would strongly kind of emphasize the EU measures as well, because we are small nations. At least in Finland we see ourselves as a small nation. So it's very hard to put more kind of a national input into something. Thanks.
No, brilliant, thank you. Yeah, and that was good to reference the waterborne projects as well. That's I think Kongsberg have got a good tap into that I've seen in the past, so for sure. So with the importance then of the collaboration around the Clydebank, what is I don't know, Paolo, are you able to explain, perhaps what the next steps are with the Clydebank declaration? Are there when are you guys meeting first? That seems to be quite key to unlocking some of the next steps.
So I'm afraid I'm not the best person to provide an overview of the next steps, because I'm not leading on that, and I think my other team member will be quite cross. But what I can do is that if I do that, because I tend to do it. So what I will suggest is, if we exchange emails with the relevant policy leads, then I can put you in touch with relevant people in my department.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tom.
It seems to be become quite apparent we need that extra. That the market needs that push, perhaps, from some of the certainty that this can help bring. There's been questions in the chat around the biofuels and the sort of competition for fuels. How is maritime going to play against aerospace and automotive and with some of these fuels? Any some views from the floor there? How are we going to? Paolo, straight back in.
I'll be very quick. So we obviously, as mentioned, are technology neutral, but with the publication of the consultation on the renewable transport fuel obligation, we effectively adopted a vision of the CCC in relation to the role of biofuels. So biofuels do have a role in reducing emissions, but the amount of biomass in the UK is limited. That means that it has to be used more effectively across the energy system, which is not in maritime, is in those modes where there are fewer decarbonization options, which in transport is aviation and mostly international aviation, which is why the RTFO will not support biofuels in shipping, but will support renewable fuels of non-biological origins like hydrogen and fuel produced with hydrogen like ammonia and methanol. We are not banning biofuels from the shipping sector. We just say we are not incentivizing their use.
Okay. So, Kai, jump in. Yeah.
Yes, from our point of view, I would say that marine has always been using those fuels that are not used by other. So as such, we have learned from many years that we will use in the most efficient ways the fuels that the others cannot use. And here I also see with the alternative fuels that there will be fuels that somebody really need, and then it will be a high price on them and perhaps not enough of them. So then they will not then be for us in the marine, but then we can use all the other fuels that are available. And here I would say that it will be a balance at sometimes. For example, we are not using kerosene in our engines on marine today, even though we can. But it has never been a topic to say that can you run on kerosene, because you know who is taking that. And here I think also with alternative fuel that will be the same, that we will look for the most economical and then we can use them in the way, because we also have the possibility to have several fuels at the same time on the vessels, which perhaps a airplane or a truck or something they would not like to have.
Yeah. Thank you. I think Eero, your hand shot up as well. So.
Yes, thank you, Tom. I think two issues are key here. One that Kai already says is that shipping can use many of the same alternative forms of driving powers and fuels as other modes of transport. So this is not the question of shipping only. It's where we go in society in general, in transport in general, with new fuels. And I'd like to see that we have, like the Clydebank Declaration says, what is the point of the Clydebank Declaration is that you have individual tryouts where you kind of show the rest of the world that okay, with this fuel this can be done, and then you take it from there and kind of spread out. And of course, one of the greatest challenges related to alternative fuels in shipping is of course the price level, which has already been discussed now, and they're higher than those charged for conventional fuels, and of course also the sufficiency of these fuels for shipping. And also, I'd say anticipation of distribution needs at port level, and I think that these are challenges that can only be solved in kind of a great regional cooperation or great regional cooperation in Europe. And I'd say what's very important is that in the Baltic Sea and North Sea areas.
Well, Hugh was on there earlier, but that's it.
Baltic Sea and North Sea areas, we could all kind of look at these together and see what the kind of the option is for here, for example, for short sea shipping. That's, I think it's very, very key here. Thanks.
And Charles, thank you. You stuck your hand up.
No, thank you, Tom. I mean, we're certainly not going to move into a single fuel market. We're going to move into a multi-fuel, a polyfuel market going forwards. And that's for a number of reasons. But if you go back to the whole sort of where we're looking at when we look at 2050, is we're looking at the supply of energy coming from renewable electricity sources, whether that be wind, nuclear, solar, etc. So it's all going to be about efficiency. We've got finite resource. So step one is to electrify, use the electrons where possible. It's been alluded to as well. That's not always feasible. And then the next most efficient way is to take via electrolysis is hydrogen. And it brings to that debate. Yeah, that's why electrolysis development is so important, because that will bring down the cost of hydrogen, but also make it more efficient so we can get more of it. And then the next easiest one is ammonia, because it's just a nitrogen molecule, and then it goes on. So it's all about efficiency of the fuels moving forward. In terms of looking at competing with other suppliers or other end users, I would also say we need to collaborate. There'll be a key part in terms of collaborating and de-risking. And there's also already some cases, Port of Cromarty, etc., which is getting hydrogen for another industry, the whiskey industry, etc. And yeah, it's going to be stored in the port. It may be imported or generated at the port. That's then the catalyst for another industry to use it. So getting more of it, but de-risking the investment side for the storage. I saw another question there on methanol as well. And when we're looking at the pathways, yes, methanol has a good pathway for the here and now. Today, you've got biomethanol. You could potentially use other sources of methanol as well. But when we look towards 2050, and we're looking at renewable methanol, is that cost could be more. So it's not a very simple case of one fuel being different to the other, but that whole transition pathway as well, there is a whole mix in there.
It's seriously complicated. I'm glad we have all of you on the panel. Marta, you came back into the picture. Did you want to input on that last one, or I have one more question.
All right. I guess my internet is jumping a bit up and down today, but maybe it's exciting because of all of this. But I think you rounded up pretty well. But of course, thinking of the space needed in different vessels when you go from when you combine the energy that we can get from each molecule, as mentioned, and all the way out to space, then we of course we kind of see these steps, and I would say as a technology provider, the really important thing is to get some collaboration on what is the different steps and when would they be ready, because of course we see these this big and exciting demonstrators being produced for hydrogen and for ammonia and methanol and all of them. But of course the big question is, when would this be commercially ready for our end customers, and in what steps?
I think the High Seas 3 project is a really good example, isn't it? That kind of producing hydrogen from the wind turbines up in Orkney and powering the vessels locally as well. It's kind of like the perfect case study in many ways. So there's one great question there from Jeff in the chat about nuclear. That's not been mentioned by anyone today there. So quick thoughts on nuclear, the nuclear option. Eero.
Thank you. I have to be brave with this one, because it's always a risk going answering something on nuclear. But I think this was at least here in Finland, it was touched upon when we planned and wrote and coordinated the roadmap for fossil-free transport that then became in shipping. It became this government resolution. So it was touched upon there that there is potential in nuclear as well in shipping, but the safety risks and everything related to all other things that go on in small scale nuclear reactors in general. So I think it's only about having the innovators there that do something on this, and then having the correct safety and security protocols in place. I think that's the key here. But I think these are lacking at the moment, both on international level but also on regional level. The regulations on nuclear on shipping. Thanks.
Charles.
Yep. So nuclear is an interesting one. Currently the developments are ongoing. I believe Core Power are talking about a pilot by 2027, 2028. So that technology readiness is lower down, which, yeah, it could be a silver bullet, but we'd have to wait till a bit longer to see if it's working or not. But it also flips the model on its head. When we're looking at this, this is very much going to be looking at the future fuels and their cost. It's going to be an OPEX challenge. CAPEX is going to be less relevant moving forward. However, when you're applying molten salt reactors or small modular reactors, you've got a huge weigh-in on CAPEX, but potentially your OPEX will be very little for the lifespan of the vessels. But there are other parts there as well, as if we're looking at nuclear for floating offshore installations for creating the e-fuels. Yep. On that side, but also the potential which nuclear may provide in terms of reverse cold ironing and aiding some countries also achieve their emission targets as well. So there is potential there around nuclear. Still lots of work to be done, but it's certainly not off the agenda.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Charles. Kai, you just had your hand up there.
Yes, nuclear, it doesn't need to be nuclear on the vessel either. You can make, is it then pink hydrogen or pink ammonia or even natural, or not natural gas, but methane out of excess nuclear power, and then it will be CO2 free. And if the world goes that direction, that we will have a lot of nuclear on land, then of course this energy is just as CO2 free as any energy that is made for with new fuels. So here, from our point of view, there is where we see it at the moment. So it's like pink ammonia or to be used.
I hadn't heard that one before, the pink bit, so that's very interesting. Paolo, you have your hand up. Was that just a legacy hand, was it?
It was a quick question to everyone here in relation to nuclear. So from a policy perspective, yes, we need to look into that, right? Because we don't have a lot of evidence around nuclear. The question there are a series of questions in relation to cost, in relation to waste disposal of onboard nuclear reactors, and I wonder if anyone here can provide further evidence, and obviously I'll be very happy to listen to that.
Okay, and open invitation to everyone, I guess, to input Paolo on that. So, no, okay. Well, look, folks, I think I think we've covered the questions by hook or by crook in the chat. Unless anyone's got any further things to add or come on into the questions, I think we could probably all head off to our lunch or afternoon break. So various thanks to give from my side. So Venera, you've been in the background today, but you've done all the organisation and coordination of all the speakers here. Thank you very much, alongside Ingrid at DIT in Oslo and Helen, who works for the Society of Maritime Industries. So thank you for that team for pulling together today. Really interesting. I think it's actually vital that we learn more about the Clydebank Declaration and its next steps as well. So there's open invitation to Veneri in the chat there to to contact him and more connections. If we've not answered questions, then we'll get back to you today soon as well. So thank you to all the speakers. Thanks for all your time. You've got to prepare and tune your presentations for all of today, and thank you for staying onto the panel, and thank you to the audience. I think we've held on to most of the audience for this as well. So I think we can probably say thank you and hope to see you in the flesh soon. If North shipping was happening more easily, we would certainly all see each other there, I think, but it'll be slightly touch and go where we are with that at the moment. But anyway, hope to see you all very soon. Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.